I've still got my color sensor plugged into port 3 and the ultrasonic sensor plugged into port 4. Let's try and collect some data for analysis outside of the EV3 software. Okay, so if you're in oscilloscope mode, just click up here on this little icon to stop oscilloscope mode. And now I'm going to go down to the bottom and I want to set up an experiment. And my experiment, let's change the duration. Instead of having it be a 10-second experiment, I'm going to change it to a 12-second experiment just so I can show you that I can change things. And I'm going to grab 20 samples per second because I want a little bit more data. And what I'm going to do is sample all 4 of these, the 2 sensors plus the 2 wheels. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to hit that download and run button that typically we don't use. But for this particular experiment, the robot's not going to run away from me. So download and run is exactly what I want to do. Okay, so I'm going to hit download and run, and then I'm going to mess with the sensors. So let's hit download and run. And let's collect some data. So I'm going to move my hand in front of the ultrasonic for a little bit, and I'll hide the color sensor, and then wave around, and let's move the wheels a bit, up, down, up, down, up, down. Woohoo! And there's my 12 seconds. Okay. All right. Now, the EV3 software does give you some tools to manipulate this data here in the software, but your students may have spreadsheet software they're already familiar with. So I'm going to show you how to use that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the Tools menu, and I'm going to click on Export Datasets. Okay, and that pulls up a Finder window, browser window to try and figure out where you're going to save your program. I'm going to save it in the same place I save my Lego projects, and I'm going to call it experiment, let's call it for video.csv. Notice it's saving it as a comma separated values file, which is readable by many spreadsheets. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Okay, so now that my experiment's over, I'm going to start up Microsoft Excel. You can start pretty much any spreadsheet that can read a CSV file. So now I'm starting up Microsoft Excel, and you can start up anything that can read a CSV file. Here we go. And I'm going to go to the File menu and say Open. And I now need to find that folder that I had saved my experiment data in. And you got to be careful here because I know I saved it in my Lego Projects folder, but right now it says no items match your search. So what you may have to do is right now it's only looking at listing Excel files for me. I actually am going to click on this and I'm going to open up text files, which includes .csv. And there you go. There's my experiment for video.csv. So let me double click on that. And now what we have to do is import this data into Excel. So I'm going to say that my data is delimited because it's separated by commas, and I'll say next. And I'm going to select comma as the separator, and you can see that it lines things up so it looks pretty good here. And you can actually say finish now if you want. Here we go. And now let me make this a little bit bigger. See if I can make the font bigger so you can see it. There you go. It's a bit too big maybe. Here we go. So you can see I've got 5 columns here. This first one is time. Remember we did a 12-second experiment and we took 20 samples per second. So here's our first 20 samples, right? We take it at we start by taking our samples at time 0, then time 0.05, 0.1, 0.15, and so on. So there's 20 of them. It should go up to a total of 12 seconds of data, right? And if we look here, I can actually, if I go to the view menu on here and say freeze the top row, just so I can see, you can see here's my time, here is my color sensor that was plugged into port 3, here's my ultrasonic sensor plugged into port 4, my rotation sensor plugged into port B, and my rotation sensor plugged into port C. And if you look at this, you can see that if we go down a bit, you can see here's my color sensor is changing a little bit, right? The ultrasonic sensor didn't change very much, and then we put my hand in front of it, and all of a sudden the values for the ultrasonic sensor changed, right? And as I scroll through the data, eventually we'll see me rotating the motors. Oh, no, right now, first off, I stopped putting my hand in front of the ultrasonic sensor, but over here you can see I was covering up the color sensor, so the ambient light intensity went way down. And then you can see the ambient light intensity starts to rise, and I start playing with motor B, and then at the very end, I think, there you go, I rotated motor C a little bit too. Okay, so this is pretty cool, and once you have data in a spreadsheet like this, you can do whatever you would do with your students with a spreadsheet. You can analyze the data, you can graph the data. It's pretty fun.